I wasn't just excluded from my sister's wedding, I was erased. The woman I'd grown up with, the person I thought I knew better than anyone, turned her back on me without a second thought. And when she showed up at my door, tear-streaked and begging for forgiveness, I realized something. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her at all. This time, I wasn't going to play the role she wanted. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at her table. I wasn't going to forgive. I was going to watch her unravel, and I'd let her know, loud and clear, that I was done being invisible. I'm Lily. I'm the youngest of three sisters, and I've spent most of my life in the shadows of the older ones. It wasn't that I didn't have my own moments, it's just that they had more attention, more affection, more everything. And I was okay with it for a while. After all, I wasn't the loud one or the one who needed constant praise. I was the one who stayed in the background, who observed, who said little but felt everything. It's a role I had accepted until the day my sister Emma got engaged. At first, it was the usual excitement. The family gathered around, we all laughed, we made jokes, we argued about seating arrangements, nothing new. But as the wedding planning unfolded, something shifted. Something that should have been about love and unity began to feel like a contest. Suddenly, everything seemed to revolve around Emma. She was the bride, of course, but it was the way she started to treat the people around her that felt wrong. I'd always been close to Emma. I admired her. She was the confident, outspoken one. But over time, her confidence turned into something else, something sharp. She began making decisions that felt less like personal choices and more like demands. It started with the guest list. The wedding was small, intimate, she said. Fine. But then it turned into who was invited, not just how many, and it was like she had a list of who mattered and who didn't. My name was missing from that list. At first I thought it was an oversight, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't. She had left me off intentionally, and it wasn't just the wedding, it was everything. I wasn't in the bridal party. I wasn't consulted about any of the plans despite being her sister. When I spoke up about some of the choices she was making, she brushed me off. "You're too critical," she said. "This is my wedding." I accepted it, thinking maybe I had been too harsh, but deep down I knew it wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about something bigger, something I couldn't ignore. Then, when I finally had enough and spoke out more directly about how I felt, about the hurt, the exclusion, the way she was treating the people closest to her, Emma's response was colder than I ever expected. She didn't even try to justify herself or have a conversation. She just shut me out completely. No, worse than that. She told the rest of the family that I was being dramatic, that I was trying to make her special day all about me. The wedding planning went on without me, and I went from feeling like a sister to feeling like a stranger in my own family. The day of the wedding arrived. Everyone was there except me. Emma's big day was happening without me, without the person who had spent her entire life loving and supporting her. But I didn't show up. Not because I couldn't, but because I had realized something. She didn't need me there, and honestly, maybe I didn't need to be there either. Then came the call. It was late in the evening when Emma showed up at my door, standing there, looking fragile. Her eyes were red from crying. She was holding herself together, but barely. The calmness I had once seen in her, the fierce and confident Emma, was gone. It was replaced with this raw vulnerability I wasn't used to. She stood there for a few seconds as if trying to find the words. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice small. "I've been horrible to you, and I didn't even realize it. I hurt you. I was so caught up in everything, I forgot about you. I forgot about us." She choked back a sob, and for a moment I saw the person I had once known, the person I had admired, the person I still loved. But that didn't change what had happened. It didn't change the way she'd treated me. It didn't change the fact that she had chosen everyone else over me, her own sister. I stood there, quietly processing her apology. Her words hung in the air, but they didn't erase the last few months. And I just watched her. She stood there, pleading, hoping for some sign that I would forgive her, that I would tell her it was okay, that I would embrace her and tell her everything was fine. But I couldn't. I couldn't just let it go, not this time. She wasn't the same person anymore. Neither was I. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. I finally spoke, but it wasn't with anger, nor was it with forgiveness. "I don't forgive you, Emma," I said, my voice steady. You don't get to just walk in here and expect me to forget how you treated me, how you treated our family. I don't know if I ever will forgive you, but that's not why you're here. You're here because you wanted to feel better. You wanted me to make you feel better. Her face fell. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. She just stared at me, tears still falling, but I wasn't moved by them. You don't get to fix this with a couple of words, Emma, I said quietly, stepping back from the door. Not now, not ever. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I didn't get emotional. I just let the moment sit, the weight of everything we had lost, everything she had taken from me, everything that was now out of my hands. Emma's sobs faded as I closed the door. But the silence, that's what remained. And in that silence, I found my peace. The days that followed felt like I was living in a different version of my own life. I went through the motions, work, errands, late night scrolling through social media, but nothing felt real. I kept my phone on silent, not wanting to hear from anyone who might be calling with words of comfort, or worse, words of judgment. My friends reached out, but I didn't want their sympathy. They didn't understand the depth of the wound. None of them knew what it felt like to have someone you loved choose everyone else over you. At night, when the house was quiet, I could hear the soft hum of my own thoughts. I relived that moment at the door over and over. Emma's tear-streaked face, her apology so desperate. It had all felt like a performance, like a show she was putting on to make herself feel better. And I hated that I was the one who had to watch it. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one waiting for an apology. It was her who had come to me. But instead of relief, I only felt a quiet emptiness. I wasn't angry at her anymore. I wasn't upset. I was just indifferent. The anger I had been carrying with me for so long started to fade, but what was left was a kind of cold acceptance. I didn't need her to apologize to move on. A week passed before she texted me again. It was short, direct. I miss you. Please let's talk. I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I thought about what I wanted to say. I thought about how I could tell her that I wasn't going to forgive her just because she asked for it. I wasn't going to pretend that everything could go back to normal. But then I stopped myself. This wasn't about what I wanted to say anymore. It was about me. I was tired of trying to force something that wasn't real. She had chosen her wedding over her sister, and I had chosen my peace over the drama. I didn't reply. Days went by. Emma tried to reach out again, but I wasn't interested in talking. Her texts became less apologetic and more frustrated. "Why won't you just talk to me?" they read. "You're being childish." It was in that moment that I realized what I had been missing all along. Emma's version of love had always been transactional. She would give me attention, affection, and care, as long as it benefited her. As long as she could keep me close enough to feel like we were a team, but not so close that I could challenge her choices. She had always wanted me in her life as long as I stayed in my place, and I had let her define that place for so long. But now? Now I was defining my own place. I didn't need Emma to love me on her terms. I didn't need to prove my worth by being the sister who always forgave, always gave in. I was done being the silent one, the accommodating one. I had spent years pretending that her love was enough. It wasn't. Weeks went by without us speaking. The silence between us became a steady, growing thing. My friends would ask me how I was doing if I had talked to Emma. The truth was, I hadn't thought about her much. Sure, there were moments when I would hear her name mentioned or see a picture of her wedding on social media, but it didn't hurt like I thought it would. In fact, it was like I had moved on without realizing it. Emma's wedding photos started flooding my feed. There she was, radiant and happy, smiling next to her new husband. The whole world seemed to have moved on. The whole world, except for me, apparently. I wasn't part of that day, and I wasn't invited to be part of their new life. But you know what? I wasn't jealous anymore. I didn't care. I remember one evening sitting alone in my apartment, staring at the glow of the city skyline through my window. I was sipping on a glass of wine, letting the silence of my apartment sink in. It was one of those rare moments where everything felt still. No anxiety, no pressure, just quiet. And in that silence, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anyone to give me permission to live my own life. I wasn't waiting for Emma's approval, or for anyone else's for that matter. I had been holding on to the idea that family meant everything, that I had to keep a place for them in my heart, no matter what they did to me. But the truth was, family doesn't automatically earn your loyalty. You have to earn it. And for too long, Emma hadn't earned mine. That night, as I sat in the quiet of my living room, I felt something else stirring inside me. It wasn't anger or resentment anymore. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes when you stop holding on to the things that weigh you down, the grudges, the guilt, the expectation. I wasn't mad at Emma. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. Done pretending, done apologizing for things I didn't need to apologize for. Done with the emotional toll of constantly being overlooked. Done with trying to force a relationship that wasn't healthy. The next day, I went to the local coffee shop. I was sitting there, scrolling through my phone, when I saw a message from my mother. It was a simple one. "Lily, we miss you. We want you to come to the family dinner this Sunday." It wasn't the first time my mom had reached out since the wedding, but this time there was a shift in me. I wasn't going to make my decision based on guilt. I wasn't going to show up just to keep the peace. I thought about it for a few moments before typing my reply. "I won't be there," I typed, then paused. I could already feel the weight of the silence that would follow my decision, but that was fine. I didn't owe anyone a place in my life that didn't make me feel whole. "I've been finding peace in my own way," I added. "I think it's best I stay where I am." I hit send, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing the right thing for me. The next few days were a blur, but in the best way possible. I went about my usual routine, but this time with a quiet confidence I hadn't felt in years. I didn't rush to answer texts. I didn't panic when a call came from an unfamiliar number. And most importantly, I didn't let the weight of my family's expectations bear down on me. The decision to stay away from them, to stay away from Emma, was starting to feel more natural. And with each passing moment, I felt lighter. But I wasn't blind to the inevitable. I knew my decision would come with consequences. Family doesn't always let you go quietly, especially when you've been a part of their narrative for so long. They don't just let you slip away into the background without trying to pull you back, like some kind of magnet trying to find its true north. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the first real crack in the silence came. My phone buzzed as I was sorting through some paperwork at my desk, a message from my mother. Her words were simple, but laced with an urgency I couldn't ignore. "Emma's been asking about you again. She's really upset, Lily. She wants to make things right." I read the message and felt the familiar pull in my chest, the knot that tightened whenever Emma's name was mentioned. My mother's words didn't surprise me. They never did. Emma always got upset when things didn't go her way, when she didn't have control over the narrative, when she was forced to confront the fact that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't always the one who mattered most. For a second, I let myself wonder if this was her way of trying to fix things for herself. Was she genuinely sorry? Or was she just trying to make herself feel better for the wedding disaster she had created? I wasn't sure, but it didn't matter. Not anymore. I didn't respond to my mother immediately. Instead, I let the silence settle in around me, the calm before the storm. I had been the one who had put up with their drama for years, the one who had always tried to make things work despite the way Emma and the rest of the family had treated me. I wasn't going to be the one to cave in this time. Later that evening, as I was unwinding, my phone buzzed again, another message from Emma. It was long, filled with an odd mixture of pleading and confusion. "I don't understand why you're doing this," the message began. "You've always been there for me. Always. And now you're just gone. I thought you were my sister. I thought we were supposed to be there for each other." I could almost hear her voice in the words, the desperation, the frustration. She didn't get it, did she? She didn't understand that I was the one who had been left behind. I was the one who had been there for her, not the other way around. I could feel my blood start to heat as I read her words, but I stopped myself before I let the anger take over. Number not, this time. I read through her message again, slowly, calmly. She had the audacity to make it sound like I was the one who had abandoned her, as if her actions, her complete disregard for me, had somehow been justified, as if her demand for loyalty was more important than the way she had hurt me. I set my phone down, taking a deep breath. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. I wasn't going to fall back into the same pattern. I had already decided this wasn't about her anymore. This was about me, my boundaries, my peace. The next morning, I woke up early, the sky outside just beginning to lighten with the first hues of dawn. It was the perfect kind of stillness I needed to gather my thoughts. I had been drifting, trying to find the right words to respond to Emma, but I knew what I had to do. I had to say it clearly, without hesitation, without remorse. I sat at my kitchen table, phone in hand, and began typing. Emma, I know you're hurt. I know you don't understand why I've distanced myself, but I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because I've spent so many years putting myself last for everyone else, and I can't do that anymore. I can't just keep pretending that everything is fine when it isn't. I can't keep showing up for you when you won't show up for me. This isn't about your wedding. It's about everything that came before it. All the ways I've been treated like I don't matter, like I'm not good enough. I've given so much of myself to this family, to you, and I've never gotten that in return. It's not just about the wedding, Emma. It's about me finally choosing me. I paused, reading the words back over and over. They were harsh, they were blunt, but they were the truth. I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. I wasn't going to apologize for putting myself first. After a moment's hesitation, I hit send. Then, just as I expected, the floodgates opened. The texts came in quick succession, each one a mixture of guilt, confusion, and anger. Why are you doing this, Lily? Why now? I don't deserve this from you. I thought we were sisters. Don't shut me out like this, please. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to explain myself anymore. The conversation was over. The door had been closed. That night, after everything had settled, I went for a walk. The cool evening air felt like a breath of fresh air against my skin, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of expectation on me. I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. I wasn't holding my breath, hoping someone would reach out and make everything okay again. I was simply walking, moving forward, and that's when I realized I had already won. Not by making Emma apologize, not by forcing her to understand my pain, but by choosing myself, by walking away from the hurt, the manipulation, the years of silence. For once, I wasn't holding on to the past. I was walking toward something better, toward peace. And that, I realized, was all I really needed. Days passed, and with them, the heaviness of everything that had happened began to lift. I felt the void Emma had left, but it wasn't an emptiness anymore. It was a space where I could breathe. My days were mine again, free from the expectation of playing the role that had been assigned to me. For the first time, I wasn't a background character in my own life. I was the one writing the script, and that felt good. I kept busy. I went to work, hung out with friends, took long walks on weekends, and got back into the hobbies I had put aside for far too long. I wasn't lonely. I was content. But I knew deep down that there was something still unresolved between Emma and me. I wasn't chasing reconciliation anymore, but I also couldn't ignore the fact that this rift had left a scar. Then, one afternoon, the knock came. I was sitting at my desk, sipping coffee and responding to emails, when the sound of someone knocking on my door pulled me out of my work haze. The knock was slow, deliberate, almost hesitant. I hesitated myself, unsure whether I wanted to deal with whatever was on the other side. I hadn't seen Emma in weeks. I had no intention of seeing her anytime soon, but curiosity tugged at me, and I found myself walking toward the door. When I opened it, there she was. Emma stood in front of me, looking as fragile as I had ever seen her. Her hair was slightly disheveled, and her eyes were red, as though she had been crying. She was holding a small, crumpled paper bag, and there was a sense of unease in her posture. She wasn't standing confidently the way she usually did. This time she seemed almost small. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt different now. Less charged, less angry, more like an unwelcome guest lingering in the room. I could see the vulnerability in her face, the exhaustion in the way her shoulders slumped, but I couldn't just forget. I couldn't just allow her to waltz in like nothing had happened. Lily, she finally said, her voice breaking slightly. I. I came to apologize. I didn't say anything at first. I simply looked at her. I wasn't angry. I wasn't upset. But I wasn't ready to forgive her either. I had already made peace with the idea of us never speaking again, with the idea of her never truly understanding the hurt she had caused me. I didn't know her forgiveness. I wasn't going to give it easily, if at all. Her eyes searched mine, and there was that familiar look of frustration, the one I had seen so many times growing up when she wanted something from me. But this time, it wasn't the usual Emma I knew, the one who demanded attention and loyalty without ever truly earning it. This was a different side of her, a side that had been broken down by the very things she had once taken for granted. I don't know where to start, she said quietly, lowering her gaze. I don't know what I was thinking. I was so caught up in everything, my wedding, the idea of perfection, all the plans, and I didn't see how much I was pushing you away, how much I was hurting you. I crossed my arms, standing in the doorway, trying not to let the sudden rush of emotions overwhelm me. I didn't need to hear her excuses. I had heard them before. But this time, her words were different. They weren't just words, they carried weight. She wasn't just apologizing because she had to. She was apologizing because she understood, at least for the first time, the damage she had done. I've been a horrible sister, she continued, the words coming faster now. And I know I can't undo the hurt, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, that I never meant to make you feel like you weren't important to me. You are important, you always were. Her voice wavered, and for a split second, I saw a glimpse of the Emma I had once loved, the one who had been my confidant, the one who had laughed with me, who had been my sister, the one who had shown me that family could be more than just blood. And in that fleeting moment, I almost felt the pull to forgive her, to fall back into the role I had played for so long, but then the reality hit. She wasn't sorry for me, not really. She was sorry for herself. Sorry because she had pushed me out of her life and was now reaping the consequences. Sorry because her wedding was over, and the picture-perfect life she had been crafting for herself didn't feel as complete without me in it. But that wasn't my responsibility anymore. It never should have been. Emma, I said, my voice steady but firm. I don't need you to apologize to me. I need you to understand that what you did, what you always do, isn't okay. You can't just push people aside when it's convenient for you, then come back when it's not. I'm not just going to pick up the pieces because you asked me to. Her face fell, and for a brief moment I saw the full weight of the consequences she was facing. But even though I wasn't angry, I also wasn't giving in. I wasn't about to let her apologize and pretend that everything could go back to how it was. You don't get to come in here, Emma, and expect me to forgive you just because you're upset or because you've had a change of heart, I said quietly. I've spent my whole life trying to make you happy, trying to fit into whatever mold you wanted me to. But I'm done. I can't keep doing that. I have to live my life for me now. She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up a hand, stopping her. Not now, not yet, I said, my voice gentle but resolute. You need to learn that you can't just expect people to fix things for you. And right now, Emma, I can't fix this. I'm not the one who broke it. You are. There was a long pause before she spoke again. This time, her voice was barely above a whisper. I understand. I nodded slowly, then stepped back from the door. I'll always love you, Emma, but I need you to understand that love isn't enough to fix everything. It's going to take more than words. It's going to take time. She stood there for a moment longer, as if waiting for me to change my mind, to offer something more. But I wasn't going to do that. Not anymore. With a final, almost imperceptible nod, she turned and walked away. I stood at the door for a few moments longer, the silence wrapping around me like an old, familiar blanket. It wasn't relief I felt. It wasn't anger. It was just clarity. I knew I had made the right choice. The storm had passed. The space between us had been filled, not by a simple apology, but by understanding. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for Emma to come to me. I wasn't waiting for her to fix it. I was fixing myself, and that I realized was all I needed to do. The days that followed Emma's visit were quiet. The tension between us had not been resolved, but something had shifted in me. It wasn't an immediate sense of triumph or victory, nor was it a burning desire to reconcile. It was peace, an odd kind of peace that came from knowing I had taken control over my own life, over my own heart. I wasn't chasing her approval anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to fix things. I was simply living. I threw myself into my work, threw myself into my own life. The freedom felt different now. I wasn't held captive by the constant worry of how Emma would react to my actions, or whether I was fulfilling some role I had never agreed to. It was liberating, really, to be able to make decisions without considering her or the family's feelings. For the first time in years, I could just be, but the quietness had its own way of creeping up on me. I hadn't heard from Emma in days. There were no more messages, no more attempts at making things right, and part of me felt like I had won, like I had finally freed myself from the emotional shackles she had placed on me. But then there was another part of me, a part I wasn't entirely prepared for, that missed her. It wasn't the old Emma, the one who could be dismissive and selfish, but the version of her I once knew, the sister I had grown up with. I missed her laughter, the way she would know exactly what to say to make me laugh, the inside jokes we had shared. Even though I had put up walls around myself, there was still a piece of me that longed for that connection. The problem was, I had outgrown the version of Emma that had kept me tethered to her and the toxic dynamics of our family. The one who saw me as just another player in her story. But I didn't want to be a player anymore. I didn't want to be a character in someone else's narrative. I wanted to be the author of my own, and that meant continuing to push forward without looking back. It wasn't easy, though. There were days when I would scroll through social media, and there she was. Emma, looking perfect in all her wedding photos, smiling with her husband, surrounded by the family I had once been a part of. The captions were all about how blessed she felt, how grateful she was for her new life, for the love and support of her family. The messages were filled with praise and compliments from people who had no idea what had really happened behind the scenes. For a moment, the bitterness would creep in. For a moment, I would wonder what life would have been like if things hadn't turned out this way. What if I had been included? What if I had been the one standing by her side on her wedding day? The thoughts came and went, but they didn't stay. I had learned to recognize them, to acknowledge their presence, and then let them go. Instead of dwelling in the what-ifs, I began to focus on what was right in front of me. I found new hobbies, things I had long since abandoned, because I was always too busy trying to be there for everyone else. I took up painting again, something I had loved as a child but had put aside in favor of more important things. I started running on weekends, feeling the crisp air against my skin, the rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement. I read more books. I reconnected with old friends. I made new ones. I began to reshape my life, brick by brick, without needing Emma or anyone else to approve of it. And slowly, very slowly, the gap between me and the family I had once known began to widen. It wasn't that I was intentionally distancing myself. It was that I no longer had to keep reaching for something that wasn't giving back. I had been stretched thin for so long, and now I was learning how to fill my own cup without waiting for anyone else to pour. Then one evening, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Emma. It was simple, short, even. Just a few words. "Can we talk?" My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. I didn't feel the old familiar knot in my stomach. I wasn't prepared to jump at the opportunity. In fact, I wasn't sure what I wanted from this conversation anymore, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. I thought about it for a few moments before responding. I wasn't angry at her, but I also wasn't eager to open the door back up to a past I had started to heal from. "Sure," I replied, "but I think it's important we have this conversation face to face." The next day, Emma showed up at my door again. She didn't knock this time. She just stood there waiting for me to invite her in. I could see that she had been crying, her eyes red, her posture still unsure. She was holding a cup of coffee, an offering, I guess, an attempt at peace. I could feel the weight of what was unspoken between us. It wasn't just the wedding anymore. It was everything that had happened over the years, everything she had never truly acknowledged. I stepped aside and let her in, motioning to the couch. She sat down, her hands clasped in front of her, as though she didn't know where to start. "I've been thinking a lot," she began, her voice quieter than before. "About everything, about what you said that day, about what I did to you." I remained silent, letting her talk. I wasn't rushing to fill the gaps with my own words. I wanted to hear what she had to say. "I don't know why it took me so long to see it," Emma continued, her voice trembling slightly. "But I hurt you, Lily. I took you for granted and I pushed you away. And I don't know how to fix it, but I want to. I don't want to keep living with this guilt. I know I can't change the past, but I want to be better. For you. For us." The apology was different this time. It wasn't about her being upset or trying to make herself feel better. It wasn't about her trying to fix the surface level issue. It was raw. It was real. I looked at her, really looked at her. "I can't say I forgive you yet," I said, my voice steady but not harsh. "But I can tell you this is the start of something. Maybe it won't be the way it was before. Maybe we'll never go back to being who we were, and that's okay. But I'm open to the possibility of us finding a new way to be sisters, to figure out what that looks like, without the expectations, without the roles we were stuck in." Emma nodded slowly, relief washing over her face. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was progress, and that, for now, was enough. As she left that day, I felt a strange mix of emotions, but mostly I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not because everything had been fixed, but because there was a chance. A chance for us to rebuild, not on the foundation of what had been broken, but on something new. Something honest. It wasn't about forgiveness for me anymore. It was about moving forward. And for the first time in a long time, I realized that was all I needed. Time passed, and with it, the distance between Emma and me began to feel less like a void and more like a necessary space. We didn't dive straight back into sisterhood, nor did I expect us to. What I realized was that this space wasn't a gap between us anymore. It was a foundation we could slowly rebuild from if we were both willing. The conversations became less about the past and more about the future. Emma and I began speaking more openly, though in a way that was less about catching up on old memories and more about being honest about where we were now. I didn't hold her apology as some grand gesture to erase everything that had been done. Instead, I let it be a small step toward something different, a new version of what we could be, not bound by expectations but by something more genuine. We didn't force anything. Instead, we let the relationship unfold naturally, with no pressure for it to look like what it once had. We didn't try to replicate the bond we had as children, or even the way we were before the wedding. We simply moved forward, creating something new with each step. One day, Emma invited me to lunch. I was hesitant at first, unsure of how things would feel now. It had been months since the wedding, and everything was still raw beneath the surface. But I knew this was the next step, small, steady steps forward. Over lunch, we didn't talk about the past. We talked about our present lives, her new marriage, my new job, the things that made us laugh. It was awkward at first, but with every passing minute, the weight of our history began to lift. And for the first time in a long while, I realized that we weren't bound by our old patterns. We weren't who we had been. And that was okay. Later that week, I went to my first family dinner in months. I almost didn't go. There was that old hesitation, that old feeling of, do I belong here? But as I sat at the table, surrounded by people who had once felt like strangers, I realized something important. I wasn't waiting for their acceptance anymore. I wasn't trying to prove myself. I wasn't holding on to the idea that I needed to be included to be part of the family. I was there for me, and that was enough. After dinner, Emma pulled me aside. She didn't apologize again. She didn't need to. Instead, she smiled at me. A real smile this time, not the forced one from before. She simply said, "I'm glad we're doing this, Lily. I don't know what I would have done if I'd lost you for good." And for the first time, I realized that this was all I needed from her. Not to fix the past, but to acknowledge the present. To acknowledge that we both had grown, that we both had learned. I didn't need her to be perfect. I didn't need to fix everything. What mattered was that we had both finally come to terms with who we were, not as sisters in the conventional sense, but as two people who had shared a part of their lives and were learning to share a future without the weight of old grudges. I drove home that night feeling a sense of peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from pretending everything is fine, but the kind that comes from knowing where I stood. I had learned to stand on my own, to make my own choices, and to embrace the woman I had become. And maybe, just maybe, Emma had learned something too. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone else's approval. I wasn't waiting for them to tell me I was enough. I was already enough exactly as I was. And in that moment, I knew that the healing wasn't just about repairing the rift between Emma and me. It was about mending the pieces of myself that I had lost along the way. Pieces I had once given away in hopes of being seen, being needed. Now I was whole again, and that was more than enough.